Christine Brown has once again stepped into the spotlight with the release of her long-awaited memoir, a raw and deeply personal account of her years inside the polygamous household led by her now ex-husband, KODY Brown. For years, fans of Sister Wives have speculated about what truly went on behind the scenes, what emotions were buried beneath the smiling family portraits, and what fractures eventually broke apart the sprawling plural marriage. Christine's new book delivers answers with startling clarity, but it also provides intimate details that many did not expect, including her candid recollection of her wedding night with KODY and the haunting experience of a honeymoon that she describes as nothing short of horrific. For Christine, the moment that was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter in love and life quickly descended into disappointment, loneliness, and tears. The memoir takes readers back to a young Christine who entered the marriage with hope, believing she was stepping into a divine calling and that she could help build a family of faith, trust, and love with KODY. Instead, she found herself in a marriage where her needs and emotions were consistently placed behind the desires of her husband, and the complicated dynamics of a household that included multiple women all vying for space, affection, and validation. According to Christine, the very first days after her marriage to KODY set the tone for years of heartache. She describes in the book how her honeymoon, which should have been a joyful escape to celebrate their union, became an emotional nightmare. KODY, she says, was distant, inattentive, and consumed by his own sense of importance rather than the intimacy and connection his new wife longed for. Instead of warmth and passion, she recalls feeling invisible, overlooked, and emotionally abandoned, a feeling that continued to resurface throughout the marriage. Christine does not hold back as she recounts the painful details of that first night together. Her words paint a picture of a woman filled with hope only to have that hope shattered almost immediately. She describes lying awake in silence, tears streaming down her face, as she realized that the man she had just married seemed entirely disconnected from her needs. This, she explains, was not just about physical intimacy but about the emotional neglect that set the foundation for their relationship. The horrific nature of her honeymoon, in her words, was that she felt utterly alone, as though she were merely fulfilling a role rather than being cherished as a partner. Her story grows even more complex as she reveals that years later, another wound was opened when Robin Brown, KODY's fourth and only legal wife, confronted her over something that may sound trivial on the surface but, as Christine explains, revealed the deep dysfunction at the heart of the family. Christine writes about how Robin pulled her aside one day and directly challenged her for refusing to give KODY massages. To outsiders, this may appear to be an insignificant matter, but within the world of the Brown family, this was loaded with meaning. Christine recalls Robin insisting that it was a wife's responsibility to take care of KODY in every way, including massaging him when he was tired, stressed, or upset. Christine, however, had already endured years of what she considered neglect and emotional starvation. The idea of offering him tender physical care while her own needs were being ignored felt not only demeaning but also like a betrayal of her own worth. She recalls feeling both furious and heartbroken during that confrontation. For Christine, this was not just about massages. It was about a hierarchy of love and attention that placed KODY at the top while the women were left to compete for scraps of affection and validation. Robin's confrontation, Christine suggests, only underscored what many viewers of Sister Wives had long suspected, that Robin was consistently treated as the favorite wife, and that she was unafraid to assert authority in a way that reinforced her privileged position. For Christine, who had already endured years of disappointment, this was yet another sign that her place in the family was always going to be secondary and that her own happiness was never truly a priority for KODY. Throughout her memoir, Christine threads these intimate moments into a larger narrative about resilience, faith, and the journey to reclaim her identity after decades of being diminished within a marriage that gave so much power to one man at the expense of the women who shared him. Her retelling of her horrific honeymoon is not just about that single night but about what it symbolized. It marked the beginning of years where she learned to silence her own pain, to smile for the cameras, and to play the part of a dutiful wife even as her heart was breaking. And the confrontation with Robin over massages, though seemingly small, symbolizes the ways in which the wives were expected to cater to KODY's ego and physical needs while their own emotional well-being went largely ignored. Christine also uses her memoir to explore the dynamics between the wives themselves, noting that while they often presented themselves as a united sisterhood, the reality was far more complicated. Resentments simmered beneath the surface, favoritism was evident, and competition for KODY's time and affection created wounds that sometimes never healed. Robin's arrival into the family, Christine suggests, intensified these issues dramatically. KODY's affection for Robin was undeniable, and Christine recalls how this shifted the balance of the entire household. She describes how other wives, including herself, felt increasingly sidelined and diminished as Robin became not just a wife but KODY's confidant, his partner in decision-making, and his priority above all others. The emotional power of Christine's memoir lies not just in the shocking details but in the vulnerability with which she shares them. She does not shy away from admitting how long it took her to recognize her own worth and how difficult it was to finally walk away. She acknowledges that for years she stayed because she believed it was her spiritual duty, because she did not want to fail her children, and because she thought she could somehow fix what was broken. But as she revisits moments like her honeymoon night and Robin's confrontation, it becomes clear to her, and to readers, that the system was never designed for her happiness. Book also provides insight into her decision to finally leave the marriage in 2021, a decision that shocked fans but that Christine now explains was the culmination of years of heartbreak. She describes a pivotal moment when she realized she could no longer sacrifice her self-respect for the sake of maintaining an image of unity. Walking away was not easy, she admits, but it was necessary for her survival and for her children to see a model of strength and independence. As the memoir circulates, fans of Sister Wives have expressed both sympathy and admiration for Christine. Many have long suspected that the Brown household was far from the harmonious picture it tried to present, and Christine's words confirm those suspicions while also shedding light on the depth of her suffering. Social media has lit up with comments from viewers who praise her bravery in speaking the truth and who criticize KODY and Robin for the roles they played in Christine's pain. Some fans have said that the passages about her honeymoon are the most heartbreaking, while others point to the confrontation with Robin as evidence of how toxic the family dynamic had become. The cultural impact of Christine's memoir is already being felt. In sharing her truth, she is also challenging broader narratives about polygamy, faith, and the role of women in religious marriages. Her story is not just about one family on a reality TV show but about the struggle of countless women who feel trapped in relationships where their needs are consistently disregarded. By pulling back the curtain, Christine has given voice to a silent pain that resonates far beyond the Brown household. As Christine continues her life outside of her marriage to KODY, she has embraced a newfound independence. She is remarried to David Woolley, a relationship she describes as filled with love, respect, and laughter. In her memoir, she contrasts this new chapter with the painful experiences of her past, underscoring the importance of finding a partner who values her for who she is rather than what role she can play. The juxtaposition between her horrific honeymoon with KODY and her joyful life with David is stark, and it serves as a reminder that sometimes the only way to find happiness is to walk away from what no longer serves you. Christine's memoir is not just a tell-all. It is a testimony of survival, growth, and the courage to reclaim one's narrative. By revisiting the darkest moments of her marriage, she has not only exposed the cracks in the Brown family's carefully crafted image but also offered hope to those who may feel stuck in similar situations. Her story reminds readers that pain does not have to be the end of the journey and that it is possible to step into a brighter, more authentic future. The image of Christine, once a young bride crying herself to sleep on her honeymoon night, has now transformed into that of a woman who smiles with freedom, who tells her story without fear, and who reclaims the dignity she was once denied. Her memoir, with its revelations about KODY, Robin, and the painful memories she carried for so long, is a powerful addition to the growing body of stories by women who refuse to remain silent. And in Christine's case, her truth-telling is not just a release for her but a gift to those who read her words and see in them the possibility of their own liberation. For years, KODY Brown has been both the centerpiece and the lightning rod of TLC's long-running reality series Sister Wives, a man who once boasted of balancing the lives and emotions of 4 different women in a plural marriage that was marketed as an experiment in faith, family, and unity. But as the seasons unfolded, what began as a story of unconventional togetherness slowly unraveled before the cameras, revealing fractures, resentments, and betrayals that would ultimately leave KODY isolated with only one wife by his side. Now, in what is already being called one of the most explosive releases in reality television memoir history, KODY's long-anticipated book has dropped early, and inside it, the polygamist father of 18 admits to his worst moment, a chapter of his life that he describes with haunting clarity and a sense of regret that many fans never expected from the man who has often resisted accountability. The early release of the memoir has taken the fandom by storm. Social media buzzed almost instantly as snippets from the book began to circulate, with readers poring over every detail of KODY's revelations about his relationships with Mary, Janelle, Christine, and Robin, as well as his own shortcomings as a husband and father. Among the stories, none has captured more attention than his confession of what he calls his worst moment, a point in his plural marriage journey that left scars not only on him but on the women who once shared his life. In the memoir, KODY pulls back the curtain on the internal chaos and the explosive confrontations that defined that period, leaving readers with a deeper understanding of the man who has become one of the most polarizing figures on reality television. KODY begins by reflecting on the early days of Sister Wives, when he still believed that his marriage to 4 women could stand as a testimony to the beauty of polygamy. At the time, he projected confidence, insisting that his family was thriving under the pressure of cameras, fan scrutiny, and the demands of raising 18 children. Yet behind that bravado, cracks were forming. He admits that as tensions grew between the wives, he often responded not with empathy but with anger, defensiveness, and retreat. It was in one of these moments, he reveals, that he lashed out in ways he now deeply regrets, words and actions that he says marked the worst moment of his life as a husband. Although he does not shy away from describing his frustrations, KODY spares little detail in explaining how his actions wounded those closest to him. He recalls a confrontation with Christine in particular, a heated exchange during which years of resentment spilled over. Christine, who would later become the first wife to leave him, had long expressed her unhappiness with the family dynamic, and KODY confesses that instead of listening, he dismissed her pain and belittled her concerns. In hindsight, he calls this his lowest point, admitting that his pride and stubbornness prevented him from showing compassion when his wife needed it most. For KODY, this moment stands as the beginning of the end, the fracture that grew until it became irreparable. The memoir goes on to detail how that worst moment became emblematic of a pattern that repeated across his relationships. With Janelle, he admits to shutting down emotionally when she challenged him, retreating into silence instead of engaging with her needs. With Mary, he concedes that he allowed the connection to rot away after her catfishing scandal, refusing to repair the relationship and instead resigning himself to a loveless companionship that he now acknowledges was unfair to them both. And with Robin, the one wife who remains with him, he admits that his favoritism only fueled the jealousy and resentment of the others, widening the divide and ensuring that healing was nearly impossible. What is striking in the memoir is not just KODY's admission of failure but the uncharacteristic vulnerability he displays. 4 years on the show, viewers watched him deflect blame, often pointing to the wives as the source of the family's dysfunction. Fans grew accustomed to hearing him accuse the women of betrayal, ingratitude, or disloyalty, while portraying himself as the man struggling to hold it all together. But in the book, KODY acknowledges that his leadership often veered into control, that his anger alienated the people he loved, and that his inability to compromise drove wedges that eventually toppled the plural household he had spent decades building. Still, readers are divided over whether this confession signals genuine growth or a belated attempt to reshape his legacy. Some fans have praised him for finally owning up to his mistakes, noting that it takes courage to put such painful memories into print. Others, however, remain skeptical, pointing out that the wives, particularly Christine and Janelle, have already shared their versions of events in their own words, often painting KODY as dismissive, cold, and self-centered. For those critics, KODY's confession of his worst moment feels less like an act of accountability and more like an attempt to stay relevant in the narrative that his ex-wives have increasingly dominated since leaving him. Christine Brown's memoir, which made waves earlier this year, detailed her own heartbreaks with devastating clarity, including her lonely honeymoon and the years of emotional neglect she suffered at KODY's hands. Janelle, too, has spoken candidly about how KODY often attacked his exes when they distanced themselves, accusing them of betrayal rather than acknowledging his own role in the breakdowns. Against this backdrop, KODY's new book is being read both as a confession and a defense, a balancing act where he tries to admit fault without surrendering the control he has always prized. The reception of the memoir has also reignited debates about the very foundation of polygamy as practiced in the Brown household. KODY's admission of his worst moment reveals the deep flaws in a system that asks women to share a husband while silencing their needs. Many commentators argue that KODY's failings are not merely personal but structural, the product of a lifestyle that prioritizes the authority of one man while demanding sacrifice from multiple women. In this sense, his book is being interpreted not just as a personal reckoning but as an unintentional critique of the very lifestyle he once sought to promote. As excerpts continue to circulate, fans are dissecting the passages line by line, comparing them to what they saw on television. Some note that the memoir fills in gaps left by the show, explaining why certain scenes seemed more tense than the cameras revealed. Others argue that KODY is rewriting history, glossing over moments that cast him in a worse light. The discourse has been intense, with online forums and fan groups lighting up with debates about whether KODY's version of events should be trusted or whether it is simply another chapter in his long pattern of self-preservation. Beyond the controversy, what is undeniable is the cultural impact of the memoir's early release. Sister Wives has always been more than just a reality show. It has been a lens into questions of marriage, faith, family, and autonomy. KODY's book adds a new dimension to that lens, forcing both fans and critics to confront the complicated humanity of a man who has become both villain and anti-hero in the public eye. By admitting to his worst moment, KODY opens the door to empathy, even as he invites further scrutiny. The timing of the release has only heightened the drama. Coming on the heels of Christine's explosive revelations and Janelle's candid interviews, KODY's memoir feels like his attempt to reclaim the narrative, to ensure that his voice is not lost in the chorus of ex-wives who have moved on without him. Whether or not readers believe him, the fact that he is finally willing to admit fault marks a dramatic shift in his public persona. The man who once laughed like a villain on camera now presents himself as a flawed human being who carries regrets. As the memoir makes its way into bookstores and homes, the full scope of KODY's story is being absorbed and debated. Readers will continue to grapple with the authenticity of his confessions, and fans of the show will inevitably compare his words to the lived experiences of the women who have told their own stories. But for now, one thing is certain. KODY Brown's worst moment is no longer a private wound hidden behind reality television smiles. It is public, it is raw, and it will shape the way his story is remembered long after the cameras stop rolling.